What's up, brothers and sisters? How are you doing? I have a simple question for you. Are you a drug addict? If you drink coffee, you're a drug addict. Now, hold on. Before you say, Jason, you're completely off your rocker, let me tell you something. This is how you know if you're a drug addict. Try stop drinking coffee for 1 week and see what it does to your head, see what it does to your body, and see what it does to your life. Brothers and sisters, coffee is a killer. Coffee will kill you. It was a little over a year ago when I stopped drinking coffee, and it took a little under 10 days before this sledgehammer migraine ever stopped. I had no idea how much of a hardcore drug addict I was until I stopped drinking coffee. Once I did, everything in my life has changed. Your sleep patterns change, your world changes, and your addiction and your jonesing for that cup of joe disappears. Now, a little over a year ago, I put together 2 different videos. And in these videos, I was doing research on coffee because I couldn't understand why it was pushed so hard across everywhere and why everybody said it was so good for you and that it was just this great thing. It's the waker-upper. It's your morning cup of joe. The best cup you've ever had is in your morning cup, right? And then I did a little bit of research on it. And I'm going to put together a little compilation of both these videos that I put together. Now, brothers and sisters, coffee will kill you. Coffee depletes the oxygen in your brain and it hurts you. If you drink coffee, you have not had a successful night of sleep since you started drinking coffee. You may think you have slept, and you may think that you have gone to bed, and you may think you have a wonderful night. But there's a lot to be said. So if you will take some time, I will put together both these videos right here. And this is from a year ago. And this has been successfully a year off of the caffeine. And it will change your world. And it is something very, very deadly. So with that, enjoy the show. Out there, I hope you are well. I hope you are blessed. This is actually going to go on multiple platforms because I can actually say things in this that I cannot say elsewhere. Normally, this would only go to my family at 153news.net. And again, for the YouTube channels, 153news.net is not a place for kids. It is a place for truth. And truth is dirty, truth is filthy, and it is not what you would think it is. And so, if you don't know what that is, if you take a top look at the 153news.net to understand exactly what I'm saying, all you got to do is pull up the page and take a look at the top of that, and that's what I mean about the truth. Now, let's get into this. And last Friday, the day before the Sabbath, I was watching a Dollar Vigilante video, and the guy was saying, yeah, I just had coffee, and I quit coffee. And it put me 3 days in bed. I was moaning in bed, and I was trashed. And immediately I thought, man, this guy's a beta male. I've drank coffee all my life, and I quit several times. Several different times I've gone, and every time I quit, I always go cold turkey. I just stop. And I was like, let's see what this does, and let's see if I can fight through this. And this is my adventure. I think I'm 44 years old right now. And so this is my adventure.
You're 45.
45. Thanks, Nicole. I'm 45. My wife has to remind me that I'm so old. But anyway, let's just say that at this point in life, I am probably not in the best health of my life. Earlier this year, I had a complete blindness where I went from being able to see, and I went completely blind to the point I couldn't see anything. I wrapped a towel around my head and I walked with a little cane around my house, and I could hear the disappointment in my family's eyes as I was trying to just make my way around. And we have 10 pit bulls, and so if you're looking for a place a blind person shouldn't be, is like trying to walk through a living room with 10 pit bulls who are everywhere. And so as we learned and as we are trying to figure out why I went blind, I believed that I had it figured out. And it's simply a lifetime of sugar abuse. And I am what you would probably call a diabetic at this point. And there's a couple problems and I guess a couple caveats here, is that we are at a point in this world where I will not go to a doctor. I couldn't go to a doctor. There are no such thing as medications. There are no such thing as unless there's some herbal healing of some kind, it's not going to happen. And so when one of us gets hurt or dies, literally, if we end up dead, we'll just go back under the old oak tree or something and be buried. There's no 911 down where we live. There's no such thing as this, right? And so as I am chasing the diabetes, and I believed that my diabetes, when I started checking my diabetes levels, my sugar levels, I was in the 200s. I was way in the 200s, way too hot. And immediately we changed every bit of my diet. We just stopped, again, cold turkey. And I know a lot of people will just go to insulin and they don't want to change their diet or anything. I stopped completely, right? It is a no sugar. It's an almond flour life. It is a world completely different than what I knew. And it's kind of a bummer because we stocked up 10 years of flour and it's food I can't even eat. So I don't even have the right food that I need to eat. So it's a lot of, I'm not going to say starvation because I'm still a big boy, but I feel like I'm starving. And so we got this down. And so it was about 30 days, maybe 15 days after we stopped the sugars that my eyes started to recover. And it was weird because it progressively went out until there were just nothing but dots and blackness. And when it started coming back, I started seeing little things here and there. And it was complete darkness, right? It went completely, I could not see anything. And it was the craziest time in my life. Probably one of the craziest times. Having functionality, and especially where I'm the admin of 153news.net, always uploading videos and things of that nature, it was really, really hard. And I had to rely 100% on my blessed family, on my God-given family that basically saved my life. And so we got it back. And so I've been working on this, trying to figure this out. And, it's always a fight with blood sugar. I'm like completely smoted. And so I've been drinking mango tea, not mango tea, but like mango leaf. We just went out to the old mango tree and boil it down. And I've been exercising very, very heavily since the first of this year. And I believe the blood sugar is under control. But then I started getting, I started losing a little bit of vision here and there. And I noticed it when somebody on 153news.net said, hey, that says porcupine, or it says porcuyun or something. I thought it was like porcupine serum. And then he's like, no, he says porcuyun. It's some article I was doing. And I'm like, wow, maybe I am really losing it worse. So anyway, this takes me back to watching that video on the Dollar Vigilante a week ago, right? This is 1 week ago from when I stopped drinking coffee. So last Friday, I had my last cup of coffee at night, and I was drinking probably 9 cups of coffee a day. And it's not like heavy brew. It's nothing else. It was just straight black coffee. So I stopped, right? So I go through Shabbat, and I got maybe a little mild headache, and it wasn't anything bad. So that was day 1. Now, day 2, it began in the middle of the night, and the headache hit like a sledgehammer. And it was, I guess, nothing else you could call but like a migraine, a high-grade migraine. And that lasted all of day 2. And I mean, throughout the morning of day 2, I started puking. And it felt great. Every time I puked, it was weird. My whole body would start shaking like I had tremors. And so my whole body would start shaking. And it wasn't like when you're sick, when you're going to chuck and you start tasting that stuff in your mouth. It was a totally different kind of puking. Like it was some sort of massive brain damage is what I had. And so day 2 was really bad, and it was the worst. Day 2 was absolutely by far the worst. And I survived day 2. And day 3, and so I made 1 day in bed. When I said this guy was a beta male, he's not a beta male. I don't know how much coffee he was drinking, but at some level I may have like self-identified myself as a beta male because the story goes on. And so day 3, it was still massive headaches, right? I'm still struggling. My body still tremors. I was having crazy, crazy dreams. Like the dreams are just off the charts. And it just felt like I was maybe in a car wreck or not even in reality anymore. And, I was up. We have 10 pit bulls to babysit. So, I mean, I literally had to stay up. And, I put a pair of shades on. And I'm trying to keep the lights out. But the problem is if you're looking for a reason for high blood pressure, it would be hypertension because of these dogs. we're always screaming at the dogs not to fight, because if you like let them go crazy, then they fight, and it's even worse, and you're jumping in the middle of a fight. And I'm sure my old ticker isn't going to be happy about any of this. So day 3, it gets worse. It gets lesser, but I'm still having massive headaches. So it was all the way down to yesterday, day 6, and it was another day. I really thought I was on my way out. I really did. I did some videos for my family that, just in case that something happened, I wanted some last words. I wanted to make sure that they heard some things. And so that's where I was, to the point of, I don't know if I'm going to make this. And, there's no such thing as coincidences. So I knew that the caffeine had something to do with these massive headaches. And, my wife said the last times I detoxed, it was bad. But I've never puked from a headache before, so that was new. And for you guys out there that get headaches, may Yah bless you and heal you guys. I'm super by I did not realize how bad it was for headache folks. So this is where I'm going with this. Yesterday was by far the worst. This morning I woke up around 2 in the morning, and I felt like a new man. I'm like, wow, it's gone. It's that raging, weird, it's always there kind of a headache. It's kind of still there. It kind of feels like I maybe got bashed across the skull with some pipes or something. I feel really beat up, but it's not as bad as it was. And so I actually found yesterday on day 6 of this, I found some music, and it was on YouTube, and it said 99% that it will heal migraines. And so I cranked that up, and I just sat there, and it didn't stop the migraine completely, but it while I was listening to it, the headache went away, which I thought was really amazing. So I will link that video in the bottom of this video for anybody that suffers migraines, and maybe that will help you guys as well. It definitely did something. I don't know how it did something or what exactly it did, but it was very soothing. And you guys know when you have migraines, your head it's just over. It's just really over. I don't know too much more painful. I don't know if death is that painful. I think death would just be maybe a bust in the chest or something, and one last pain, and then it's over. But let's get where I'm going with this, because as I am going in this, and I didn't know anything about this. Everything that you ever see, it's all about, the coffee is so good. These are the top 10 things about coffee and how it does this. And as I was reading about some of the headaches, and the question, this article came up because I said, how long will caffeine detox headaches last? And so it went through all of this, and it didn't really tell me a days. It just says that, yeah, you're going to get them. It's going to be pounding, and it gives you some structure here. Then it talks about the fatigue you're going to experience. And even on day 2 and 3, I got on my actually not day 2, day 3, I got on my exercise bike. I have an exercise bike thing here that's like a wannabe Schwinn thing, and I was trying to grind that headache out, and I was even unable to do that, and I was putting strenuous stuff on this, and I kept reading through this article, right, and difficulty concentrating, and then depressed mood, and then where was it looking? Irritability. Let's see, where is it at right here? It is right. Let's see, anxiety. Sorry guys, I just did this one on the fly here. There it is, right? It's actually on the first one here. So this is the statement right here that got me yesterday really thinking about this, because as I am detoxing from this, and I'm like, wow, this is like, I hate to be the guy that admits this, but I've detoxed from a tremendous amount of illegal substances before. And yes, I've led a wild life, and there is a reason why I need a Messiah, and that's one of them. And so I have a lot of experience in detoxing from drugs. I'm just saying it. And so this was by far the worst detox of anything I've ever done. Any street drugs, any pharmaceutical, anything I've ever taken that you ever had a come down from. I've never had a come down such as this. And I was trying to figure this out. And so I saw this statement right here. It said eliminating caffeine increases blood flow to the brain, which can cause headaches in some people.
Now I'm getting to think about this. And I sat there and laid with my head throbbing, thinking about this. And I'm like, why would you ever want blood flow to decrease from the most important, or one of the most important pieces of your body, right? Your brain, your heart and your brain. I mean, I guess all the organs like that are very, very important. But, the one that we're talking about, why would you want blood decreased? And I couldn't figure this out. So this morning, I went and I started researching it, and lo and behold, it actually does. So I want to go over this with you guys a little bit, and I know there's a lot of coffee drinkers out there, but this is something I think we should all know, because I don't know when people start drinking coffee, but this is yet another deception that we have all been led down, and here we are, right? Let me just read this article. This is probably true, because he says, you're not going to like this one bit. You've been lied to about the health benefits of coffee. Yeah, and I mean, anybody who doesn't think coffee is a drug, try to stop it for a week. Try to stop it for a couple of days. See what happens. How hooked are you, right? You look at those poor guys coming off heroin and methanol or whatever. I can't remember what this stuff is. The other heroin, methadone. Yeah. If you see those guys coming off heroin and methadone, they're just a wreck, right? They're a wreck. The come down is terrible, and that's one thing I can say that I haven't done, thank goodness. But let's listen. Caffeine is an alkaloid that the coffee plant uses to kill bugs, which eats its seeds. The coffee plant also uses caffeine in the coffee pods to kill surrounding plants, so the coffee plant can attain more sunlight and grow larger. Caffeine is a pesticide, which causes genetic termination in living cells that come in contact with it. This is important. MRI images taken before and after 1 cup of coffee showed a decrease in blood flow to the brain by 45%. When the blood flow reduction was measured exactly, it was actually 52%. Less blood flow to the brain after just 1 small cup of coffee. So there's a link right there. I will link both of this and these to it. So, brain imaging studies of chronic coffee drinkers showed they presented the same degradation of their brains as chronic alcoholics, cigarette smokers, Parkinson's patients, and marijuana users. There's another link. Coffee can cause an urge to move one's bowels because this is the way the body tries to eliminate poison from the system. The sudden urge to poo after drinking coffee is one of the body's defense mechanisms to poison. Coffee increases energy via the human fight or flight metabolic response because the body is afraid of the caffeine-based poison. Coffee doesn't give energy, it removes it from the body. The energy a person feels when they drink coffee is the body going into overdrive because caffeine is a poison, and all poisons activate an energy release in the body, fight or flight. Coffee removes energy from the system, leaving the person progressively more and more exhausted each day that passes. I'll attest to that. Therefore, setting up the world's most dangerous energy simulation addiction, coffee dependence for energy. When the fight or flight response is triggered in the body, the lower IQ centers of the brain are activated, as well as hormonal systems in control of aggression, violence, irrational and illogical decision-making, jealousy, rage, anger, fear, and paranoia. Coffee generates lower-end mental functioning with a side of every negative emotional response the body can generate. When measured, 1 coffee activated the fight and flight response for 3 consecutive weeks, even though no other caffeine was consumed after that 1 cup of coffee. 1 cup of coffee poisons the body for 3 consecutive weeks on a decreasing scale. So I could probably have these headaches for up to 3 weeks at least until this caffeine is out of my system. And because I am a fat guy, it's probably sitting in my fat cells, which everything seems to do, including sugars, which when I had consumed 0 sugars from 2 a.m. to 8 a.m., my blood sugar spikes up. I have 0 sugars. My diet consists of no sugars anymore, no nothing. I will not eat fruit, like you won't eat the same stuff that has any kind of sugars. And it doesn't matter. From 2 a.m. to 8 a.m., I'll check my blood sugar in the morning, and I'm high. And I jump on the bike and I blow that down until a normal level. But there's something there, right, to all this whole thing. When coffee is consumed, the limbic, let me crank this up just a bit. When caffeine is consumed, the limbic part of the brain is hyperactivated and the higher learning centers of the mind inhibited. The limbic part of the brain is only concerned with sex, reproduction, production of territory, food acquisition, and personal safety. And it's interesting to think of the times I've sat here and just pounded down coffee worrying about, are we going to have enough food? Are we going to have enough food? Are we going to, I don't know if this stuff is true. I would imagine this stuff is true. I feel like this is actually telling the story of myself right here. The birth control, okay, so back to this. When you want to outsmart or dominate another person, it's best that their limbic system is activated because it brings them to a mental state equal to that of a child. The birth control pill inhibits clearing of the ingested caffeine. The effect is increased dramatically by alcohol or painkiller use, therefore causing many cases of caffeine poisoning, which get treated as other things once the person reaches the hospital. Coffee is proven to cause an enlarged prostate, high anxiety, insomnia, depression, birth defects, pain syndromes, unnatural breathing patterns, brain damage, hyperactivity, learning disorders from the brain damage, behavior disorders, fatigue, and certain types of cancer. Crohn's, IBS, colitis, carpal tunnel, ulcers, low heart disease, headaches, PMS, increased incidence of muscle and tendon injury, joint pain, heart attack, stroke, TIAs, mini strokes, and that's the short list. Coffee causes fat gain and cellulite because by triggering the body's flight or fight system, which any poison or threat does, this eventually changes the body's primary fuel source requirement to one of fat. When the body is threatened, it prefers fat as primary fuel source over sugar or protein. Constant activation of the body's fight or flight system via the daily ingestion of caffeine poison aids in the metabolic shift to fat storage and fat conservation because, again, the body prefers fat as a fuel source when fighting any toxic intruder. Because fat contains 9 calories per gram for the fight as opposed to 4 calories per gram housed by sugar and protein. Welcome to the land of coffee-induced fat gain, weight gain, and cellulite. Coffee also destroys muscle as the body purposely flushes muscle when it's poisoned to facilitate additional fat storage. Caffeine blocks iron absorption, causing the vast majority of anemia today. There's another link. The entire thread of caffeine in general includes caffeine teas, chocolates, caffeine-based energy drinks, caffeine-based pre-workout drinks, and over 2,000 over-the-counter and prescription medicines that purposely include caffeine. An investigation conducted by the author of the most extensive book on coffee ever written reviewed almost every scientific research piece regarding coffee, and his conclusion was that there was absolutely no scientific evidence whatsoever that coffee provides any health benefits to the human body on any level, in any way. He openly declares that any positive promotion of coffee consumption is a blatant lie doing grave harm to our entire society. The publication of any positive effects of coffee are false, and all can be traced back to a very powerful, covert, and secret coffee lobby, which has been commercial and ruling family origins. And this is what the red flags, when I saw that it decreases blood in your brain, that was my red flag. And I'm like, this is not good. This is not good for Yah's people. The link reviews the research in the book at this link, and you guys can look at this link on your own. You guys can research any of this. Tell me if I'm whacked out of my skull, but I will tell you from Coffee Detox, this is straight on. How many coffee shops have opened in your town in the last 20 years? So why lying about the coffee? Think of government and how governing a brain-damaged population is easier than governing a healthy population. Start there and keep connecting the dots. Coffee is only one brain-damaging weapon used against an uninformed slave class. Now, I'm not going to go over that because the first one is things you can't say. If you've ever posed the question, why are people so stunned as to not figure any of this out? You're missing the point that the brain damage of the slave class is the primary agenda of the ruling 1%. Coffee and stuff are the elite's 1-2 punch within Operation Brain Damage down here on the human farm. The best slave is a brain-damaged slave, unable to think or care for themselves without the help from the slave master. A helpless population guarantees a need for government. That is why the ruling families do everything in their power to create a helpless population day in and day out. Governments exist because they perpetually create the conditions for their own existence. Ancient ruling families who masquerade as modern altruistic governments are not there to help the people progress, evolve, or become more. You live on a chemically controlled slave-based control grid. Coffee is just another massive lie inside the human control operation. Want to shut down the human farm? Want to shut down the human farm down? Want to really become more than the stereotypical diseased, overweight, disempowered, depressed, and dysfunctional human mess? Reject the poisons. So I will leave you guys the links. And I will tell you that without a shadow of a doubt that I believe this is very true. I don't believe you can detox and have this kind of headache and this. I don't think it's healthy. The kind of headache that I had, it's probably very close to a stroke. Like at one point when I was puking hardcore, I like sat up and I'm shaking and I could barely talk and I'm like, wow, I stroked out. This is it. This is the end. And I don't know so much as I'm completely through this, but I am through this enough that I want to help all of you guys out there and inform anybody, because I know there's a couple of you guys out there. I know there's a lot of people out there that drink coffee. And so this may be an unpopular topic, but now I have experience that I can say without a shadow of a doubt, this is absolutely damaging a human body. And not only leads to high blood pressure and everything else, which is my next battle I have to deal with, which I don't know how to deal with 10 pit bulls, but it is what it is. And so it's one step at a time, and I hope this does something for somebody. Much love to you. I'm out.
All right, everyone, we're going to do a quick little deep dive, and we're going to see how illiterate I actually am. So this is a research article. It is from doi.org, 10.33, 33, fnut.2021, F787225. Okay. This is a bunch of science dudes, and this paper is extremely hard to read, and I've read it, and I can give you the gif of it and what I was actually trying to get to. What these guys were trying to figure out is this, and you will see what I mean when I start reading this, but the first thing you should know, and I'll take you to a little part right here. The only thing that you really need to understand real quick is that para-axanthine is essentially what caffeine burns off at. So essentially, we'll just read this part real quick. Caffeine is the most frequently consumed psychostimulant worldwide. After an acute PO administration, 99% of the caffeine is rapidly absorbed within 45 minutes, which brings the peak plasma concentration of caffeine at 1 to 2 hours after the intake. The average half-life of caffeine after an acute consumption is 2.5 to 5 hours. While it can be modulated by the ingested doses, smoking, genetic variants, health status, oral contraceptives, and pregnancy, and various other factors, approximately 84% of the caffeine is transformed into paraxanthine. I don't know if that's right. Paraxanthine through the process of 3-methyl demethylation by the heptic cytochrome P41A2 enzyme CYP1A2. Okay, that's it, right? So essentially what you end up with, you don't end up with caffeine in your system. You end up with this stuff right here, paraxanthine. I got to get that right. Okay, so what this entire bunch of university people, and these are the people that wrote this end research on what this is. It's the University of Psychiatric Clinics, Basel in Switzerland, and it's like places like the research platform, Molecule and Cognitive Neurosciences, Neuropsychiatry, and Brain Imaging, University Psychiatric Clinics. So it's all a bunch of brain people, right? So this is what it is. And these are all the scientists in on this. And what they are trying to figure out is if you're drinking caffeine and it turns into this paraxanthine, does it ever leave your body by the time you intake another drink in the morning? And so this is an interesting read. Okay, so take it for what it is. Caffeine elicits widespread effects in the central nervous system and is the most frequently consumed psychostimulant worldwide. First evidence indicates that during daily intake, the elimination of caffeine may slow down, and the primary metabolite, paraxanthine, may accumulate. The neural impact of such adaptations is virtually unexplored. In this report, we leverage the data of a laboratory study with N equals 20 participants and 3 within subject conditions. Caffeine, at 150 milligrams of caffeine times 3 times a day times 10 days. There was a placebo group that had 150 milligrams mannitol, whatever that is, times 3 days times 10 days. And the acute caffeine deprivation group, caffeine times 9 days afterward, placebo 1 day. So when it's
Yeah. So anyway, on day 10, we determined the course of the salivary caffeine and paraxanthine using liquid chromatography, mass spectrometry, coupled with tandem mass spectrometry. We assessed gray matter, so GM, remember that part, GM intensity in cerebral blood flow, CBF, after acute caffeine deprivation as compared to changes in the caffeine condition from our previous report. The results indicated that the levels of paraxanthine and caffeine remained high and were carried overnight during daily intake, and that the levels of paraxanthine remained elevated after 24 hours of caffeine deprivation compared to placebo. After 36 hours of caffeine deprivation, the previously reported caffeine-induced GM reduction was partially mitigated, while CBF, which is the cerebral blood flow, was elevated compared to placebo. Our findings unveil that conventional daily caffeine intake does not provide sufficient time to clear up the psychoactive compounds and restore cerebral responses even after 36 hours of abstinence. They also suggest investigating the consequences of a paraxanthine accumulation during daily caffeine intake. Okay, so essentially this stuff is building up in your system, and at some level you may probably never sleep well, is what I kind of got from that. This is all a whole bunch of really, really hard stuff to read. And where I was wanting to go is down here a little bit. Gray matter, 40 hours. Because a lot of you guys right now are, I know, including my wife, they are having headaches and things of this nature. And so, let's see. Let's see where this is. The present study estimates the kinetics of caffeine and paraxanthine response to GM could be a typical. Let's see. So there was a point I wanted to. Daily repeated intake of caffeine is a very common phenomenon, occurs in adults. Okay, so this is not it. This is a really good read. I will absolutely leave the links in there. Is this it? Long-term neurocognitive. So here we go. So early GWAS did not support the association between. No, that's actually not it. Hold on. This is where it gets really crazy because we should recover. Withdrawal. Okay, so this is very interesting. Withdrawal responses commonly occur after discontinuing regular caffeine intake. While our reports elsewhere have discussed in detail the implications of cerebral effects of caffeine, the current analysis further added that these changes might take longer than the interval of day-to-day intakes to recover. We corroborated the caffeine cessation induced vasodilation by the elevated CBF, which could be attributed to the enhanced adenosine modulated vasodilation after chronic caffeine exposure, was also frequently observed during increased sleep pressure, such as in the evening compared to morning, and sleep restriction and sleep deprivation. In line with the literature, the cognitive responses in the same volunteers reported elsewhere included reduced vigilance, increased sleepiness, and enhanced sleep depth, confirmed that the participants were experiencing a solid withdrawal state. There was something else in here. There it is. Is this it? Okay, so this is how they're actually talking about like getting off of it. While combating withdrawal symptoms are often the reason to consolidate the daily repeated consumption of caffeine, the typical daily repeated caffeine intake, however, is unlikely to provide enough time for a full withdrawal-driven restoration. The first evidence from our observation in the overnight residuals of caffeine and paraxanthine levels, which were measured at 17 hours after the last intake. Furthermore, during the 24 to 43 hour of caffeine deprivation, while the caffeine levels were nearly cleared, the paraxanthine levels remained elevated. In other words, a repetition of intake shorter than this time window is most likely to be sufficient for the full elimination of both caffeine and paraxanthine. So this is stuff, this is a hardcore drug. When you look at this kind of stuff and you look at the effects of it and look how long it stays in your system and what it does. And this is all these people, the brain science people, they're all the ones trying to figure this stuff out. There was one more point. Okay, so let's see what the significance says. Caffeine is consumed on a daily basis among 80% of the worldwide population. It is of importance to be aware that daily consumption, even merely in the daytime, can accumulate exposure to the psychostimulant and prevent the body from full recovery. The in-progress recovery from a reduced GM and the elevated CBF after 36 hours of caffeine cessation entails a longer time required for full restoration than the conventional repetition of daily intake. On the other hand, the accumulation of and xanthine underscores the importance to investigate its cognitive and physiological effects, which may be responsible for long-term outcomes of chronic exposure to caffeine. I'll try this one. Methodologically, the adaptive metabolism also suggests a careful consideration to translate acute effects of caffeine onto daily usage. Finally, responses of GM and CBF in both the caffeine condition and after 36 hours of caffeine deprivation emphasize the importance of restricting caffeine intake when studying cerebral morphometry and neurovascular activities. This is the thing, right? And I think somebody was telling me that it didn't matter, that blood flow wasn't restricted in your head. I think it's the same guy that said I was like a religious zealot or something. But when you are dealing with CBF, cerebral blood flow, right? And this is what comes back, your cerebral blood flow. When you stop drinking caffeine and the paraxine comes out of your system, you recover, right? Your brain has to go through a complete change. And if you have extended use, even with 1 cup of coffee, it says it affects all sorts of stuff and it builds up over time. And so over time, this has got to be something completely unhealthy. So, this is more stuff, just research that I'm finding out, researching. I find it interesting, and I know people at 153news.net will find this interesting. And everything I can research about caffeine tells me it is very dangerous. And I know there's guys like, oh, it keeps you alive and does. It may do something somewhere, but by the time your heart and your vessels and your brain recover from this kind of damage, it doesn't matter what it's going to save because you're going to be dead from the effects of that. So that's it. Hope you guys have a good day. I'm out.